We're on. Okay, welcome everyone. We are a minute late, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is our final workshop. Again, this is still working through the budget, so there's no final decisions tonight. This is to present personnel wages for this coming year for the employees, and then also to just kind of go over any last items on that as we prepare for the final budget, which will be in August when we go to a public hearing for that. And then also fees tonight, we'll be talking about that. So with that, Raylene, I think this probably goes straight to you. Is that correct for tonight? So we'll turn it over to her. Go from there. So.
I realized I had taken a column on this, it's no updated numbers, I just taken a column, I apologize, I didn't. So, do you have any handouts?
You're going to take it.
So hopefully we'll be pretty brief going over this, but I figured I would go over kind of the changes of how we budgeted personnel now and kind of the budget impact. What we're recommending as COLA, the cost and comp study, and then we made significant changes in the police personnel, and so we'll talk about that, and then the policy changes we're going to be bringing forward. And then you heard a lot about the new positions, but we'll kind of talk about them in a brief overview. So some of the big changes when it comes to personnel that I kind of changed in here. So certificate pay is now part of hourly pay. This used to be budgeted as a bonus. So this is now included as hourly pay. This is better for the employees. And this is something that will be beneficial for them. This also helps our payroll person. So there's an extra step that she was doing, and so it's definitely beneficial for both sides. For positions such as planners, electricians, collections operators, where there's multiples of, I would say, underfills, we are budgeting for the higher positions. So when we advertise for collection operators, we advertise 1, 2, and 3 to see if we can get a 3. Sometimes we get a 3, sometimes we get a 1. But once they get those certifications, we're going to promote them up, and so we want to make sure that there's budget available. And so we're budgeting at that higher level until they get there. Same with the planners. I worked with Robin to redo the structure with the planners, Robin and Shelley, I should say. And so we are budgeting for the higher planners once they get those certificates. So that we're not asking for more positions, we're just budgeting as underfills until they get those certificates, and then they promote up into that. And so some of those positions are budgeted higher, and that doesn't mean that so the good thing is that we don't have to come back to you with a budget amendment in mid-year. That's something that was happening a lot. This allows us to make sure that we're going to be not coming back to mid-year with budget amendments, that we're fully planning for our positions all the way through the year and the changes that happen mid-year. The other thing that I changed was that we are budgeting mid of the pay grade or level. instead of at the minimum. This is really to give experience, to allow for hiring for experience or flexibility. You know, we don't always have brand new employees coming to us with no degree. We sometimes have people come to us with degrees, a lot of experience, and we want to pay them for that. And so this gives our hiring managers the flexibility instead of just hiring them at that very minimum. And so we want to make sure to budget for that as well. With benefits, I talked about it a lot, but we are budgeting as an average, so that we can kind of make sure that we budget for life status as it changes. This includes, we didn't talk about it, but the 2% 401k match. You know, not every employee takes advantage of this, but, you know, if they do decide to, we want to make sure it's budgeted, so. I did give you an updated department comparison worksheet, so you can see between fiscal year 23 and current year, all of the changes, and it's a lot higher. And part of that is because of the way that I budget. That's not necessarily just pay increases, that is the way I budget, and so it is a lot higher. However, with working through the process with Rochelle, working through that process, and over the course of a year, you know, it did turn out where it's not over budgeting. It could be over budgeting when we talk about a little of these operators 1, 2, and 3, because it does take maybe 1 to 2 years sometimes to get from a 1 to a 3. But in funds like the collections operator with the wastewater treatment plant, this is not general fund, so I'm not so concerned about this fund and a little bit of over budgeting. If this was happening in the police and we saw this with all of the police's positions, then I would be a little bit more concerned, but in the wastewater treatment plant, I'm not so concerned. In this budget, we also include a per se increase for police and then a decrease for general employees. That was not necessarily budgeted in fiscal year 23. So that did go into effect in July of 2023. And it impacts fire and police significantly. So, this also, I want to just make this note that the budget includes that every position will be filled for an entire year. And over the life course of business, that doesn't necessarily happen. And so, even though the budget, we expect that doesn't happen. So the budget's always going to look higher than what spending does. Because people are going to be out on leave, and it's not going to necessarily be paid. We're going to have vacancies. We're going to have, you know, turnover. That just happens in the normal course of business, even though we don't want it to. And so I just want to, you know, with the budget, we account for every position the entire year, and then as time goes on, you know, you're going to have salary savings. It's just part of, I've been doing personnel budgets for a long time, and that's just part of budgeting. That's just what happens. Part of this budget does include approximately a 2.9% increase in health insurance. We did meet with Murray Group, and we talked about this. This is the Millman projection. We're still waiting for Regions to come out with the final one, but we expect this to definitely increase. And we're looking to spread this out among both the city and the employee costs. But it is not quite finalized yet, but we do have that included in the budget. For COLAs, cost of living adjustments, we are recommending a 5% increase. This would be added after the certificate pay that we added to the base, and it would be effective in October of 2023. Today I was notified, and one thing that I didn't realize, so fire has a COLA that's already put in their CLA, but they do have language in there that if we give higher than their CLA, that we have to meet with them to discuss giving the same amount to them. So that is not budgeted in here because I just became aware of it today. Depending on the outcome of that meeting, the budget would be adjusted. So, I did that number today, it's approximately $100,000, so. We still have the class and comp study, it's still in process. I did set aside approximately 6% of the salary amount, per fund, so that between HR and finance, we can implement the results of it. There's not a specific timeline, but Shelley would be able to talk more about that if you guys do have questions on it. It's really, I will say that even though we set aside 6%, that doesn't mean that every employee would get 6%. It's really just the amount of dollars to set aside in each fund to allow us to move it to the specific employees that do need it. So some employees could get a lot more than 6%, where some employees could get a lot less. So police compensation changes, these are really significant. So we did move, police have been on the 171 and 168 FLSA hours for a long time. And we did move them to or we're proposing to move them to the 160 FLSA hours. This does increase overtime. However, surrounding cities are already doing this, so this really does create equity with our city. And when we're comparing wages from our city to another city, it really helps us justify our wages, so it makes sense. We also are proposing to move longevity and certification pay into their hourly rate, which will boost their hourly rate as well. And we created a new police pay scale, I should say police, not policy, pay scale, which Shelley handed out to you guys. What that will do it really creates a maximum minimum for police, which I think is beneficial, because right now everybody is really at the same wage depending on what position you're in. With this move, we want to move lieutenants to exempt status, which prevents them from earning overtime. And Shelley can talk more about what exempt status also does, but that's exactly what it does, is prevents them from earning overtime. So with also this, what we're proposing with this pay schedule is to put 1% longevity every year, starting in fiscal year 25 in a COLA if given by City Council. So, and it would also still be approved in the budget process every year and proposed within the budget process. So we looked at what a lot of other agencies are doing with longevity, and we've seen that this is the most equitable, and we hope that it's something that we got Chief and the Deputy Chief's buy-in on this, and worked many hours with command staff to try to find something that would work. So, for policy changes, so these are some of the policy changes that we want to bring to City Council in September. So we definitely want to look at increasing comp time buckets from the 80 hours to 240 for all city personnel who are eligible, and then looking at a quarterly payoff option. So the reason for this is what we are finding, and what I'm looking at is you notated a lot of overtime increases, and what we're finding is that people aren't actually using comp time first, they're just choosing to pay off overtime. And with the new on-call policy, we made it to where they had to use comp time first instead of paying it off, because we knew that it would have a financial impact that wasn't necessarily budgeted. So we want to give it kind of an in-between. So we want to increase the comp time bucket, so overtime first goes into comp time, and then have the quarterly payoff option within the policy, so that we can look at making sure that it's within budget and that we do have that time budgeted. And if there's no budget available within the budget, that we look at different options. So this will make it to where managers definitely control overtime a little bit better instead of just approving overtime at when. So we're also proposing exempt straight comp time. This is not for appointed officials or deputy department heads. It is for exempt employees who work overtime. They would just receive straight time comp to use like PTO. And this would have no cash value. It'd be a use it or lose it. If they ever left the city, it would just be gone. So it would not be paid out. So those are kind of the policy changes that we're proposing. For new positions, Shelley did hand you an updated list. We have three requests to reclass positions, which is really the difference in pay, which is not new positions. 2 positions that are part-time to full-time positions, which is a significant increase in benefits for those positions. 2 that were approved mid-year in fiscal year 23. And then we have 48 new positions. Of the new positions, the average wage is $28.45, with the lowest being $17.54, and then the highest being $52.11. And that's kind of all I have for personnel, unless you guys have any questions.
I actually had a question that I asked last week when we were looking at the item that said employee bonus.
Yes,
Is that still a thing? Because I thought when we had talked about that last week, you said it was a certification, but that's now in the pay?
so the certification pay is now in the base pay, but the employee bonus is a $400 amount per employee. Is what that is.
Okay, and then they get that.
In December.
So I can give it just a little history on that, kind of where that came from, what that is. So up till year before last, there was a safety incentive that was provided for employees. It was paid on a quarterly basis, $100 per quarter, so it totaled up to $400. That came about many years ago. The city had a safety officer at that time, and obviously the goal for that was reducing accidents, reducing injuries on the job to try to save the city money on that. And so they implemented that, again, that $100 quarterly incentive for that. Each department throughout the city would have some type of a safety training and a safety meeting. I remember sitting through many of those as city staff. And then you would basically sign off, say, yes, we did, and so you get your $100 paid out to you. And so as the city tracked that to look at, is this working, is it paying off, and seeing, are injuries being reduced, things of that nature. Again, this is talking, and so Shelley and Raylan were not here, so this was more with our prior HR director and our prior finance director. That those incidences we did see a significant decrease in the first few years that took place. However, over the next several years, it started to creep back up, and there was negligible difference from what we had before. And so, I guess speaking just for myself, and I don't know how other departments did it, but I remember when it first rolled out, we looked at safety, proper ways of lifting, boxes, things like that, and it over time migrated to, I remember one of our last ones is we sat together and watched an episode of The Office and what not to do from a Michael Scott perspective. So obviously changed quite a bit over time and really became something that just wasn't really of value to that. And so we sat down last year, looked at it, was already in the budget. And so at that time it was that, it's there. What do we do with that? And so it was decided to just go ahead and provide that to the employees in one lump sum, and they'd not been receiving it quarterly. So we did that at the end of the year, that $400 bonus per se for each employee. And so that's what's continued forward. So that's what's in the budget today. So that's the history of it, where it came from, why it was started, how it transformed into what it is today, and then that proposal carried forward today to providing the employees just that $400 bonus. It's not based on merit, and I know we've been some discussion that perhaps it should be. Perhaps if you do some type of review and you're the high, I know just speaking with some of the counselors tonight, Should that be based on merit? It's not, it's simply just the $400 for every employee, for the end of the year that's distributed to those employees, typically at the employee appreciation dinner.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to, NAPA had a program where, if you worked overtime, you could take that in pay or comp, or you could bank it, and then at the end of the year, you would get that banked money in December or whatever it was. It's a great program, but the employee did earn it. It wasn't, something that the city provided. So it was like if you were 2 hours of overtime, you could then bank that, and then, they kind of held it as a savings account. So just kind of an idea, because it does help at the end of the year, Christmas, and stuff like that. But I'm watching Councilor Williams making notes, so I think he's going to address some of that part of it. But I also have a question for the deputy chief, actually. So on the police compensation changes, are you guys okay with all that, with the way that they're changing the hours and the LSA? Was that something you guys came up with and were okay with, or we told this is the way it was gonna be?
I think we were, sorry, Mr. Mayor, council members, I think we were having a discussion about it. I can tell you that the lieutenants are happy about moving to a salary for obvious reasons, right? They work a lot of hours, they like to get compensated for those hours. If they do go to salary, they'll have to adjust their schedules. They obviously won't work as much, which is a good thing and a bad thing in itself. So as far as the overtime, no, the lieutenants were not happy about that proposal. As far as the pay scale, honestly, I felt like we didn't have as much time as we wanted to come to a set pay scale. So for us, it's really reaching out to members of the department, and they don't necessarily understand that pay range because they're used to a pay scale that says, this is how much you're gonna get paid when you're good to 3 years, this is how much you're gonna get paid when you get to 5 years, 7, 10, and so on. So it's pretty clear. With the pay range, I mean, you can end up anywhere on that pay range if it doesn't tell you when you're gonna get to the end, when you're gonna get to the middle. So it's pretty ambiguous as far as the chief saying, hey, I think you should go to the next step because of a specific reason.
So with this change, there's not like a policy in place that says when somebody moves to the next level?
No, it was just a low, a mid, and a high. We talked, I don't know if they're gonna go over it, about how a specific employee would be placed in the pay range. We talked about that.
Okay, so is the chief on board with this change?
I think he likes the numbers on the high end for the pay range, but as far as, he would rather have a scale that provides more clarity.
And then what about the changes in the FLSA hours? I don't exactly know how that all works, the 161, whatever,
Yeah,
but that changed.
I mean, the rates are gonna be higher because it's based off of the 2080 hours a year instead of the 2232, which is what they work now. But I don't think he's opposed to that because eventually our goal is to get them to 410s, which will put us in that 160 fairly easy. So we're not against that.
Okay, when does he come back to them?
He has one more week in Boston.
Does this have to be approved before he comes back and has a discussion with council about it?
No, the police pay schedule, Shelley and I have been working on for quite a few months. We've proposed quite a lot, so it's not finalized. It does not have to be finalized till October.
Okay, well, just in my opinion, I think this is a conversation we should be having with him here. I think that, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, or if we need to make any tweaks or anything like that. And I mean, I understand also the lieutenants don't want to use their overtime and this exempt straight time comp that kind of goes away if they leave, that's, kind of thinking.
The big thing is, and this is why I especially with lieutenants that I would say is that we hear a lot about like how much overtime and how much yearly wages people make, and how people underneath certain people shouldn't be making more than people above. And with overtime, what ends up happening is people make more. And so we're trying to, like, I get what it happens, and so we're just trying to, especially with lieutenants and how it falls with FLSA, fix some of the issues that we see. But be happy to discuss with the chief even more.
I really, let me first start by saying thank you for all the hard work you put into this, and really the experience this year has been a much better experience. Overall, I'm just really appreciative of your approach, your explanations. It's helped a ton. I'm not really sure where I want to jump in on this, but some of what Diane is talking about probably opens the door for me to address some of this as well. And the problem I have, honestly, is if I just go back to the time I lived in Caldwell, 16 years, and 16 years ago, this gentleman next to me made me a part of the police department on a volunteer basis. So I've been around for a long time. And for those entire 16 years that I've been here, and Lieutenant Wright probably 56 years or however many it's been, but we've been hearing, we're going to get caught up on our wages, we're going to take care of you, the day is coming, hold on, don't go anywhere. We know we don't pay you enough now. We want to pay you more. Urban renewal. It will sunset. That day will come. And that day has come. But unfortunately, what it looks like is we're still saying, wait, we're not sure we're there yet. We don't know if we can compete with the neighboring agencies yet. And so it concerns me in one sense that it appears as though, and of course, none of us were council members 16, 20 years ago, but we're responsible in one sense to make the decision of whether we're going to keep the word of the previous city administration or not. And I know this, I find it difficult to tell a police officer, keep holding on when he can go half a mile to the east and make more money. He doesn't have to move, he doesn't have to move his family, he doesn't have to change what he's doing, and his calls for service will go down. In other words, he'll work less and make more. And so, just for reference sake, I did a couple of case studies today because I'm kind of a simple-minded individual. And so I just talked to an employee who worked under 2 years. And I talked to an employee that's worked 8 years. And both of these employees, if we factor in this proposal, will still be making less than they would as CCSO, a half a mile to the east. And so my concern is that, number one, this is the year, what is it, 48 and a half full-time equivalent employees are being added, right? Is that an accurate number, more or less? 48 plus, it's 48 and a half, I think is what it comes to. And a lot of those positions, we all agree, are very essential, necessary positions. But here we are again, saying we have other priorities. We have other things we need to pay attention to. When some of our employees who have stuck around, have stayed in it, and even, these police officers, I don't want to be too graphic, but equity and equality are not the same thing. You talk to a police officer that's had to give CPR to a newborn infant, and it dies. Or you talk to a police officer that has to run into a bar fight, an active fight. It's not the same as some of these other positions. So for us to look at the citywide and say, you know, we've gotta be equal is not equitable all the time. And so I have a concern, I have a real concern that what we're proposing isn't gonna get us to where we need to be. I'm not sure we're far off, but I think we need to do some more work here. And I understand with the 5% and the longevity pay being wrapped in, that moves us a ways down the road. But I don't think that's keeping our word. And I don't mean our word because we didn't make that decision, we didn't make that promise. But we're the ones that are sitting in the seat now. And so we've got a ways to go with this package, especially for our police department and probably with some of our other employees in the city. But yeah, I've got more to say, and I've worked out some of my own numbers and some of my own suggestions. Maybe I don't understand. It looks like, and Mr. Mayor, I don't know where the numbers came from, and I don't know how they all work out, but it looks like the council and the mayor got a 15% increase this year. Is that round numbers correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So it does strike me as, you know, we've got some work to do. I'm a little embarrassed taking 15% when I'm offering my employees a 5% plus longevity, and even if I give them another 6% later on, it's only 11%.
So I would say that patrol officers are included in the classic comp. So they potentially could get a lot higher than 11%.
If, and let me argue devil's advocate, we don't really need the study for patrol. We have CCSO, Nampa, and Meridian to worry about. We're talking about the Treasure Valley. We know what they make. I have the CCSO pay scale right here, half a mile away from us. So if we factor in Twin Falls and Pocatello and Lewiston, it's gonna bring those averages down. And it doesn't cost me as much to live in Lewiston as it does to live in Caldwell or Boise or Meridian. And so I want to be careful that when we're comparing with Treasure Valley. And I don't think we want to compare ourselves to Parma, Bless Their Hearts, or Wilder. I don't think we want to do that. I don't think Caldwell wants to say we want to compare ourselves to the Wilder Police Department and say we're paying better. And so our comp needs to be the CCSO Sheriff's Office, and I have their pay scale right here for their employees. And that's where I think we need to focus.
So real quick, I just make a quick comment on what you had mentioned there. So that 15% proposal for the council and the mayor, that equates to the lowest paid of the city, because that 10% that was received last year was not received by the council and the mayor. Council and the mayor can only have increases every other year during an election cycle. So that matches what the lowest paid employees, well, the highest paid employees. Lowest received 15% last year, proposal was 5% this year, with an additional potential 6% plus. So that would equate to 26% minimum increase for those lowest paid employees. And so that 50% matches what the top ranked officials received. They only received a 10% last year, and then the proposed 5% this year. So it would match that, because there was no 10% last year for the council or the mayor. Those can only be done through resolution, through ordinance on election years, which is this year. And then also those numbers, I'm not sure what, I mean, and Renee can touch on this, and Shelley also, that there's more to the numbers than just the number. You know, what are they paying every month for health insurance premiums? Different things like that can equate to that. So, you know, here, a police officer is paying 0. I'm not sure, maybe that's the same at Kane County, I don't know if it shows on that, but those are things too to take into consideration. Because if you do want to manage that, then we got to look at those other numbers too, because if they're paying $200 a month in insurance, then we should be charging $200 a month in insurance if we want to pay them the same or more as them, because that makes a big difference in that bottom line. And again, maybe it is equal in what they pay for their insurance, but I don't think it is. I know some people that work at the county and they do pay higher than I do for that insurance. But those are numbers too that, in my my opinion, you want to make sure to take into consideration. And if we want to match it, then we've got to, and their numbers are higher, then we probably should take our numbers higher and then move that money into their hourly salary, their annual salary, to make it more of an equal amount on that, just in my opinion on that.
And I would agree with you, Mr. Mayor, in that regard. There is a sense in which you gotta put everything on a spreadsheet and realize what your compensation package is. I've spent the last 16 years trying to convince employees of that before they leave. They still leave because they wanna buy a house. And so they don't care when I try to tell them there's this incentive and that incentive and the other. We've got these police officers, the one police officer that I checked with today, who's been with us just under 2 years, is making $25.74 an hour. And you can't buy a house living on that. It's not possible. And I need to give the mic up, but there's a lot more I think we need to talk about. You know, I want to get back to this employee bonus thing, and I know you've had a sidebar over there, it sounds like, about it, but we're talking, round numbers, 400 employees in the city, round numbers. So we're talking $160,000 in bonuses, plus the $10,000 employee performance pay, which is a bonus. So up to $170,000 in employee bonuses. Some of that very discretionary. I think there's some more work we can be done. We can do. And like I said, there's more I want to talk about on this budget. But let me release the microphone because more people may have something to say for now, and I'll jump back in at the right time.
All right, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with Councilor Williams on this. The sidebar, I just want to be clear since you mentioned it, is I concur that I think the bonuses should be at least based on merit. And I've just given to every city employee, though certainly we support all of our city employees. I don't think that those working above and beyond, in my experience with my profession, you get a bonus when you went above and beyond, not just receive a bonus just because you existed. And I'm sure all of our city employees that come to work every day all deserve recognition, but those that go above and beyond, create new programs, create salary savings for the city, a good steward of our taxpayer dollars, and are more worthy of the benefit that they have created for the city, depending on what plan they've come up with to save the city and the taxpayers' money, versus just showing up and everybody giving the same price. So I just want to make it clear that's what the sidebar was, that I certainly think it should be based on merit and not just be handed out to everyone that works for the city.
I just wanted to argue the point about making sure that we're equal with the Treasure Valley. I could make the same devil's advocate argument with city councils. City council in Napa makes, what, $4,000 or $5,000 more than city council in Caldwell. I can make that argument. The $400 bonus, you know, where I come from, you don't get a bonus unless you perform, and I think it should be based on performance. I don't think it should just be a flat across the board deal, because that's just not right in my opinion. And as far as the police force is concerned, I don't have any argument over that, only that we have to make sure that we compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And I agree, we should be comparing ourselves to Farm Wild or anybody else, but we have to make sure that we're in the ballpark with who we compare ourselves to. So. And relative to the mayor's salary, I think the mayor over in Napa makes well over $100,000. I don't know what the mayor here makes, I never looked. But, we have to make sure that, again, that when you make the statement that we have to compare ourselves with our other friends here close by in Treasure Valley, make sure we're all included in that. So, thank you.
All right. This could be a longer meeting than we anticipated. So I have a number of things as well, and I'll try to cut them short because I know Councilor Williams has a lot more to go. And this is for our officers, Deputy Chief and Lieutenant. On the discussion about changing from the 161 to the 160 and having 11 hours of built-in overtime, right at this point, if we make that change, I would really want to see an end date to built-in overtime. You know what I mean? Come up with a schedule and pay grade that accomplishes a similar wage, but we're not budgeting regular hours as overtime hours. Does that make sense? I'd wanna see an end date to that, like, we're gonna make this change, but this time next year, we're gonna have a schedule that takes into account, we're not budgeting regular hours as overtime hours. Does that make sense? And then the other thing, and I'm sure Lieutenant Wright probably picked up on this, when you roll longevity into wages, it makes the hourly rate go up, but when you have, everybody talks about how much an hour they make, everybody's competitive, they're sitting in the back room writing reports, talking about how much an hour they make. Well, you have senior officers that are not promoted, but they've been there a long time as officers, and they're gonna be making 32, and the corporal's gonna be making 29, just because their longevity is hitting their hourly rate, and then you're gonna, I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just saying it will be something that will be a discussion if they don't make some allowance for it. We'll understand, you'll have an officer Cordell who's been there for 20+ years versus a corporal who was promoted in 5 years, and the officer's gonna be making so much more money. It's because of his longevity, not his hourly rate, but I think that you understand the point. I've got a couple more questions, but I think we need to stay on this subject, so I'll do those later.
I just wanted to also echo what Councilor Williams was saying. I support everything that he's saying, and I really feel like when it comes to the police compensation and the changes that we're talking about, that we need to wait for the chief to come back and have that conversation with him. I don't know how we do that, if we do that at council, or I'm sure Debbie will figure it out. Yeah. But I do think that he needs to be present. And as we're talking about wages and benefits and how much city puts into your per se and so on and so forth, I think it's a great time to bring up the fact that I have always thought, and these guys can do what they want to do back there, but I've always kind of thought that the police department needs to look at having an FOP that has some kind of collective bargaining powers, much like the fire department does, so that they have a voice at the table too, because right now they don't. So we have, either the HR, the police administration coming forward and saying, this is how it's gonna be, and then we have the fire department that's coming to us and saying, hey, here's what we wanna negotiate. I've never understood what the police department doesn't have that. So I'm not sure if that's a presentation you could put together, and how it would affect the city, how it would affect your department, how it's the benefits, the negatives to it, at least so we can take a look at that, like NAMPA has, or other agencies have, if we're going that route. Personally, I'd like to look at how NAMPA does their holiday pay, because I think that's an amazing thing for employees to get, a $2,500 check at Christmas time. But if Shelley wanted more information on that, I'm happy to tell you what I know, but I don't know all the workings of it. But I do know that it was a really good morale booster for employees to have that at the end of the year. And then I think that was pretty much it. But going back to the pay scale, if we have an officer who's coming in and making, $25 an hour at whatever range they're in, that's $5 less than the dispatcher's making over at NAMPA, just to sort of keep that in mind. So those are the things that people look at as well, that and that was a couple of years ago, so that could have changed. But I do agree that we need to, that we have been saying, even this council's been saying for a long time, that we want to bring our officers up to that average or someplace in there, and the retention. And we talked about this the other day, how all these employees that have been here at Caldwell have been here because they love Caldwell. I don't think you would go around and ask an employee, like, what's the number one benefit of being here? And they're like, oh, it's the pay. Like, I don't think that's it. But I do think that they love, they all laugh, see, but I do think that they love being here, and that extra perk of actually being paid well, I think would be important and do all the things that we wanted them to do. And then I also kind of just want to put it out there, maybe you can answer this, because I don't really know, but city council here, we make something like $300 a month, right? So that 15% is not going to be thousands and thousands of dollars, just so everybody knows that that's not, I don't know what Tampa makes, and I know commissioners make over $100,000 a year or whatever it is, but we're doing it because we love it, just like the employees.
Okay, let's make it clear.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just a little bit more information about the police salary schedule. We have been working for quite a few months with the chief and deputy chief and lieutenant, a couple lieutenants. We started out with an iteration where there was like 20 steps, and so every year the employee would get a step. So again, kind of back to what we talked about, if I'm an officer, I can see where I'm gonna end up in those steps. And so it was quite overwhelming. It was one that was our first iteration that we proposed. And then this is much scaled back. But I do have to tell you that our comparisons have been Nampa and Canyon County. And I have the information I got from Lieutenant Tucker back when they proposed and we were starting to work on this project. And we were able to increase the starting wage to $26 an hour. From our starting wage right now is $23.58. So it goes up quite a bit. And so this shows this, and I don't know if this is current, but this is $26.10 for starting at Canyon County, $25.96 for starting at Nampa, and ours is currently $23.58. So we felt like we got that bottom end up to at least the 26. That's somebody coming in, they have no experience, they do not have post-certification. Once they get a year and the post-certification, they would get $1 an hour and go to 27, which is higher. So when I look at year one for Canyon County, it's $26.96. So we're above Canyon County according to this. So I don't know what Councilor Williams has, and I'm happy to look at that and see if this has changed. But we were kind of hoping we could get people at that lower end, get them in here and keep them. We do have a lieutenant who's making $44 an hour on that new pay scale. He's gonna go to 48. So he's getting the 5% and his longevity, but he's also going to the new minimum of what that pay grade is. So it's not exactly the same for everybody, but we tried to create those ranges. And I know the chief, from talking to us, he's still very unhappy about the lieutenant rates. And so we're still kind of open to looking at those. I have reached out to Canyon County to get their job description. Of course, they run a jail. I mean, I think in the information I've gotten so far, it looks like their lieutenants are broader range and maybe more employees than we have for our lieutenants, probably comparable to our captain rates. So we're looking at those, but we know if you're gonna make an employee salaried, right, we're gonna make those lieutenants salaried, there needs to be a big jump in pay to offset the compensation for that. So we definitely understand that and are looking at that. So I just kind of wanted to chime in with those couple things.
I just have one more comment regarding Councilman Williams' comments on the pay and everything. When I left in 2019, which was the last budget year I worked, I was always told by the Napa Police Department, I have some friends over there, including Chief Hobbs, that our benefit package was a lot better than theirs. I don't know, Shelley, if that's true anymore, because I've been out of it for 3 years, but I was told that when I left back in 2019. So that has to be in consideration also relative to the pay. So.
Just, I got a couple of things here, but just on Councilor Stoddick's comment. I haven't checked in a while, but I know when I was working in law enforcement, the county's health insurance was much more expensive than ours.
Yes.
I don't know if there's been changes, but it used to be significantly more expensive.
They have a $4,000 deductible.
So a couple of questions. I've heard talk about raises. There's a 5% COLA, and then we talked about 6%. What is the 6%? Is it equal across the board, or what is the 6%?
So it's equal in that each budget has it budgeted, each department has it budgeted and for each person, but it's not equal in that each person will get 6%. It's that when we get the results of the class and comp study back and we get that analysis, so if for example, I'm just gonna use planning and zoning because I looked at Robin and that's what came to mind. If planners are underpaid by 5% and planning technicians are underpaid by 8%, then we're gonna propose to give planners 5% and planner technicians 8%. So,
So, if I understand it right, when we get those results back and we know where we stand, a later payroll pay grade will come back to council for us to look at, and it's just not a subjective thing where Robin likes me, so she gives me a big raise, and the other one gets like a 50-cent raise. You know.
I am not for subjective, no.
So it'll come back to council, and we'll have a new pay scale to look at.
Yes.
And then another question, all of these budgets we've looked at seem to be, you know, across the board, not just payroll, but in every situation, they seem to be at the high end. I mean, heavily padded, and like wages, you said, without a doubt, you'll end the year because you just don't have a full group all year long. What is your method, because we're new to your way of doing this, what is your method for accounting for the end of the year money that hasn't been spent in all these departments?
So my plan for that is that's gonna turn into fund balance and be accountable in the next year's budget that you guys will be available to spend as one-time projects.
Does that fund balance go back to the city general or this department?
So if it's general fund, it's gonna go back to general fund. If it's water fund, it's gonna go back to water fund.
Okay, all right, thank you.
This is just more of a statement than a question, but, I completely appreciate how, we go out and do the comparisons with the, you know, with the pay, with the benefits, with the Percy, all of that kind of stuff. But as, you know, we've talked about so many times with Caldwell growing and all the things that we're doing and elevating and all the stuff, like at what point does Caldwell become the place that everybody's comparing to, right? So I just wanna make sure that we're not, just going, well, we're kind of in the middle, you know, kind of thing, if we don't have to be. That's all I'm saying, like, I know we need to be responsible, we need to be fiscally responsible and conservative as we can, but if we, can do more for our employees, it sure would be nice to be the place where Nampa and Cannon County go, well, Caldwell's doing this, or Caldwell's doing that, like, at what point do we get to that level?
I will say that, based off the comments that I received from a lot of the compensation analysts, just from the other cities, Nampa and Canyon County, I think we are giving the higher COLA.
I won't go back into all that I said, but I still think unless we're making a statement right now as we budget, knowing what we need to do in order to get not just to the low end of what that low, middle, high was, and I appreciate what you said, Shelley, and it was a lot less complicated than what you said your first iteration was. I don't even know what that was, but you said there were multiple steps, and so I like low, middle, high, but to compare us to low isn't where we want to be, according to what Councilman Register just said. Honestly, to put us into a competitive range, like I said, we're close. If we gave the 5% plus the 6%, that's 11. I think if we got to 13% and just made the decision right now, I think we'd be in the ballpark.
That's citywide or just?
I'm talking police.
And in saying that though, I still think that, the chief needs to be present for this conversation too, though, before, or, you know, for all of the compensation changes. Unless the deputy chief wants to represent, I just feel like there should be an impertinent having this conversation as well, but it's.
Councilman Williams, I'd be happy with that as long as the benefit package is included in whatever that number is relative to CAWA versus NAPA, based on the knowledge I had back in 2019.
I'm just gonna, just to comment on that, I don't know exactly how much, because I worked for NAPA for 10 years. And at the same time, my husband was working at Caldwell and they were very comparable. So, I can't remember all of it. I do remember that in 2016 at least, and we're talking a long time ago, but I know his out-of-pocket was 3,000 something because he met it and he was diagnosed with cancer. And I remember thinking that NAMPA was very close because we had discussions about which insurance was going to be better and all that kind of stuff. So they're very comparable, and I believe that I paid as an employee for myself and all my kids, like it was like under $100 a month. It's what I remember, and I'm sure it's changed, but I remember thinking that they were pretty good.
All I'm saying is, my comment was based on 2019 when I left, based on the feedback I got from the NAPA police officers.
Yeah. Well, and so I was there in 2021, but I think, and maybe you guys know better, but towards the end of my time there, I'm pretty sure that NAPA police went to their own health insurance, right? So they were no longer taking it. Their health insurance was different from the rest of the cities. Anybody confirm that? Because I believe that they had something different, like the fire department did. They had a fire police plan.
I'm just gonna make a comment, why don't we just get them and compare them instead of, nobody seems to know what it is or what it does or what comparisons are, so why don't we just get them and compare them instead of debating of what it is and nobody knows.
So we talked about having this conversation again when the police chief comes, so maybe we need to add that to it, is having those comparisons, because I do believe they're on a police and fire plan, which was better for the employee than the city insurance.
So I will say that if police left our city self-insured plan, that we would have to switch from a self-insured plan to something that is not self-insured. Our consultant has told us that.
Okay, well, so how do we compare those numbers? I don't know then, because they're two different things, but I think if we're gonna have this conversation, we need to come up with whatever the conversation is gonna be, so that when he comes back, we're all on the same page, and we're not doing this.
Again, I'll just echo Councilor Williams, you're doing a wonderful job right there, thank you so much. But as Lieutenant Wright knows, we have worked for years and years and years to get a pay scale where you could actually move up and know where you were moving. So if you guys accomplish that, you will have accomplished a feat that many before you have been unable to do. So it'll be very nice, I hope for the best.
I will say that I have worked a lot of hours with police, and it has been my goal to try to get them right where we need. I mean, they need, it has been my goal to try to work with them as best we can to get them paid where they need to be paid.
I just want to throw in a quick comment on two things. One is that I agree with Raylan on the incorporation of the certification pay into the base. It does benefit the employees because then it's part of the base that gets multiplied by a percentage when they receive an increase. We have been warning the public works staff, and I believe that Julie's team, similar, for about 2 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years possibly even, that was going to be migrating into the base. So it's just better for the employee, and it eliminates a lot of headache. And there have been challenges in the past where someone, based on the time they started or based on the time that they left employment, they're like, well, wait a second, didn't I have a certification paycheck coming? And there was confusion about when it should have started, and it eliminates all those problems and makes sure that they get their fair certification pay. It would be valuable, I think, and maybe accomplishes what Councilman Williams was talking about, to just include that as we provide a statement of total compensation to somebody and say, hey, here's what the city's paying for your insurance, here's your certification pay, here's your longevity pay, bam, 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 it's all lined out on that statement, so they see those things separated. It's not like, well, they don't just forget about it. The one other thing I would make a comment on is our new on-call policy does make that comp time, that does pose a little bit of a challenge for us in that one of our biggest struggles is just having manpower here. To the extent that, so I would throw out one thought, that policy is inactive, so that's the way it is for now. But one thought for us to consider for the future might be to possibly give the employees a choice. And what we're seeing with the employees is some of them are really happy about it, but the new ones who don't have much time built up are like, wow, yeah, great, now I can use comp time for the time off I want to take, and then not have to use my PTO, and I can start to accrue a little PTO. But the ones who've been here for a long time, some of them are challenged with getting their PTO utilized before they lose it because they're already pushing the cap. And so that, I guess, for them, it might be nice if a choice were part of a future revision of that. But I did want to make a point about the challenge that it does pose for us in terms of the manpower. Just have the manpower at work with, that's been a tough one for us, so thanks.
Okay, so I guess it's for them first parts. We'll go ahead and take the break, schedule break, so we'll go for about 10 to 15 minutes and come back and go move into the next section. So, enjoy the time off.
Okay, I think, so we're up, going, okay, so we are back on our live stream. So again, I just want to give a big thanks to Merlin for being here from our IT department, making sure that we're up and going. We really appreciate that. And then all of our directors, appointed officials, deputy directors that are here and that have been here for many nights, the public that's shown up and been here on that, we appreciate that. A lot of time, as you know, and effort goes into this. Once we get one budget done, it's basically start preparing for the next one. And so there is so much behind the scenes that transpires with this, with the multiple meetings that myself and Mary Lynn and Rochelle have with many of these department heads and appointed officials, and then the many one-on-one meetings that Mary Lynn has, and also Rochelle and Shelley and so many others that go out there and meet with them. And so there is a lot of time and effort given into this budget and preparing it. And I think we all agree that this is a great budget that's been presented this year on that. And you can tell just from the work that's been put into that. So especially those that have seen it in the past. Not that it was terrible before, but I really appreciate the approach. Just going to touch on a few points, and then obviously any discussion from the council as well. We'll kind of get into that and any summaries and wrap up on that. But you know, some of the highlights this year from years past was, as Raylene just talked about, is looking at wages. In the past, it's always been budgeted for minimum hires, and I think it's much better looking at the medium on that we don't want to hire. Basically, you're looking at just projecting for minimum salary. That means you're looking at just trying to hire the least qualified people out there to come and fill some of these very specialized positions. And so that was a huge change, and I think a very beneficial one to the city, where it gives the ability to bring in quality talent. You know, somebody that has that bachelor's degree or master's degree or those 10 years experience, not just trying to get people that are right out of college or just wanting to get into a field without any experience. So that's a huge change on that. So grateful for that. That's been incorporated into that. You know, the discussion tonight, it is very important to look at the whole picture. I think that we kind of figure that out. We can get some of those numbers as we continue to move forward in that. And again, this is still preliminary, but this is to help really know what to come back with for that final budget in August, when we come back for those approvals at that time. as well as the fees too. So things to, continue to consider. Obviously, the positions that have been proposed, I believe those are very warranted. We are adding a lot of positions, and I don't think any of us has the goal at the end of the day to expand government beyond its needs or its its wants. And I really truly feel that these are needed positions. The City of Caldwell for many years has been well understaffed and underpaid, which we talked about a lot tonight, and those kind of go hand in hand. And as you are understaffed, you get burnout considerably quicker. You see a higher turnover on that. It's not just the pay. Pay is important on that, and that can, as was mentioned before, has been kicked down the road quite a bit. And I do feel that we've made considerable strides in the last year and a half with our pay and moving forward, that we are stepping up to those promises that have been made. Is there room to continue to grow in that? Yes, there definitely is. There probably always will be, but I feel that we're doing a really good job, in the increases like we talked about. Our lowest paid employees from just over a year ago now to hopefully on October 1st, will have a minimum 20% increase in their pay. And then when that comp study is done, if that is approved for that, then depending on where they're at. And I truly believe that the majority of our lower paid will see a higher increase. As was mentioned, that 6% is kind of a tag in there to hold it. Some employees may come back where they're kind of spot on for that market rate. Some will come back, maybe there's a 2 or 3% difference, and you may see some with a 15 to 20% difference. So, let's say there is a 15% difference, and you've got the 50% from last year, the 5% from this year, and then another, say, 15%. So you're literally increasing close to 50% some of those lower paid wages, which is very important. My end goal as we continue to move through this, and this may take, another year or two, but we're getting there, is one of the, and I told in our department managers meeting the other day, one of the phrases I hate the most is, we can't pay you as much as the invoice. Or I absolutely hate that phrase, because then it's like, why not? And I explained it in that meeting that there's positions that shouldn't be made. And we talked a little bit about, I'll just pick on me, let's say the mayor's wages. Should the mayor of Caldwell make the same as the mayor of Boise? No, they shouldn't, because the mayor of Boise has a much larger city, much more people that report to her and overseas. So that shouldn't be equal. So that's the same as many of our supervisors and our managers and our appointed officials, love them all to death. But if you compare them to the city of Boise, they're probably not managing as many people. The budget they're managing isn't as large. And so there should be apples for apples. They should probably be making the same, because they don't have that same level of responsibility. But once you start getting down in the weeds a little further into our levels, say probably 7 and below, if you're out there working in the street department or one of our police officers or whatever that may be, or in our water department, you're probably doing the exact same work, same amount of work as somebody working in the water department in Boise. So you should make the same amount as what they're making over there. The cost of living is pretty similar on that, but that's kind of the end goal, is that we do start to match these wages, regardless if it's a Boise or a Meridian. We don't want to overtax the people, but we need to fairly compensate our people on that. And so that is the end goal of what we're working towards. I really feel that with that wage study coming in, that's going to help us considerably to get a lot of those. And I think, like I said, when that comes back, you'll see, I believe, that those kind of level 5 positions lower, kind of those more entry level, you're going to see some pretty significant increases being proposed on those, getting them to those levels of matching or exceeding a Nampa, a Meridian, a Boise, and that we don't have to compare that anymore, saying, well, we just can't pay you what they pay you for Boise. We need to get close to those levels on that and not have that as an excuse anymore on that. So I'm excited. We're headed in that direction. Again, grateful for Raylyn and all that she's done. Shelly, she's been doing great as well with the HR department and kind of bringing these to life, incorporating the technologies. It's exciting to see our timesheets. You all don't have to do it, but every city employee right now does. We get basically an Excel spreadsheet printout where they handwrite in, their hours for the week, turn that in. And it's monotonous and so ineffective and wasted time. And we are moving towards those electronic timesheets. I've been receiving, I know I talked to Rochelle over today, I think I got about 100 emails today on some test runs that it's going through, so we're reading through that. But it's exciting to see the changes that are moving forward in that, and that is a cost. But again, I appreciate, the council's view of looking not just to what's this gonna cost me tomorrow, in that check to that company that say, well, what's this costing me 5 years from now? What's this costing me in staff time, having to review every single timesheet that's coming in, then somebody else having to review that and then put that into the system. Those are numbers that are hard to show on a spreadsheet, but they definitely quantify and add up. And it can cause errors, and it can cause burnout in our staff. And over time, it's just something that we need to get to. So I'm glad that we're taking those steps to get there. And whatever we can do, we have phenomenal staff in the city, from the top down. All of our employees are just incredible. And so whatever we can do to support them in that regards, we need to do what we can. Whenever I meet with our new employees, I always tell them, that's one of the goals, is to make this an enjoyable workplace. We don't want to feel like we're taking advantage of you. We want to get out of you what we need to and what we're paying you, but we want to make sure that there's reciprocity, if I said that right, on both ends, where they feel appreciated and wanted. I tell them, if you take out sleeping at home, you're probably at work more than you are at home. And so we want to make sure that this is a place where you feel at home and that you feel appreciated and that you know that you're wanted and needed here. And so I think that the strides that we've been making are showing that. The employees are appreciative of that and realize that. And again, it's just continuing to go down that path where we can't get into a mindset of, we've done some great things. We gave you these 15% raises, all is well. We're just going to kick back and put on the cruise control. As you know, we can't do that because that's why we're in the boat we're in right now. So we've got to continue to look at that, continue to utilize the tax dollars in the best way possible. And again, making sure that our employees feel appreciated and that they're being paid what they deserve to be paid. Turnover is a huge cost, and Shelley and Lynn can assert to that, and Ashley's nodding her head, and everybody else in the audience. And not just from police, we know that police and fire, especially with the training they have to go through, you're losing. Police officer walks out the door, he's walking out with basically like $100,000 in his pocket, because now you got to spend that to train the next guy coming in. And it's the same all the way down. In our wastewater division and water division, those are some very highly technical positions. And when they walk out that door, they're taking a lot of experience, a lot of money with them, because now you're gonna have to put a lot of money back into the next person. Somebody to train them and get them up to speed, and then also getting them those certifications. So those can be big dollar amounts. And so the more employees we can retain, the things we can do, it pays big dividends. And I think we've seen that, the numbers, we had quite a bit of attrition, before many of us were here. The first 6 months, that we were here, even maybe the first year, trying to work through a lot of these issues, these kinks. But I think this year especially, the turnover rate has plummeted significantly, and employees are feeling appreciated, feeling wanted here at the city. I know they love all of the things that we're doing for them, and know that they feel that we are actually putting action behind our words, not just telling them how great they are, but we're showing them how great they are. And that is a key component to that. So that doesn't happen without the council and the approvals of the budgets, and being able to give the means to myself and to the appointed officials and department heads to be able to do those things for the employees. So that's a huge deal. Again, it kind of goes into these positions that are being requested. Again, believe that these are warranted, and kind of give back to the departments and allow them to function appropriately and properly on that. So I know it's been a long week and a half that we've been doing this, but it's very appreciated. I know your time. Obviously, these are a lot of extra hours on that. That you're not really compensated. Actually, you don't get to turn in for a comp time or PTO after this. So I know that it is very much appreciated, especially on a Friday night and back here on a Monday night. We get to come back tomorrow night for city council. So it's another long week on that, but it really truly is appreciated, and the time and effort that's given into that. So those are kind of some of my just final comments on that. I support the budget as it's been presented, the positions as they've been presented. There's been a lot of work put into that, working with all the department heads and managers, and believe that it could be some good discussions mentioned when, and I have full confidence in Deputy Chief Sokowaga. When the chief isn't here, he is our chief, And I think Chief Ingram would echo that. He has complete confidence in him, as do I. But if it's felt that it's warranted to have some further discussion with Chief Ingram when he's back in town. He's doing some very needed work back in Boston. He's one of the only from Idaho ever selected to go to these classes in the academy, so it's a very high honor for him to be back there doing that. But if it's felt that, we want to have some further discussion, then we can plan a special meeting. And that would give us time, because like I said, we need to compare, and I appreciate the comments from many of the council. It needs to be apples to apples. We've got to look at the full package. So we can't just look at what the hourly rate is. We need to factor in, okay, well, what are they paying in insurance premiums and things like that? So we know what we're looking at. And then if we want to make those changes, you can. And if it's like, you know what, okay, we want to put the up here, but guess what, they're paying $400 a month in insurance. So if you want to make that, you're gonna have to pay that same amount. So I think that helps to make those decisions. You gotta have all that information, and then you can make those decisions of, what do you want to increase here, decrease there regarding salaries, regarding benefits, on that. And also knowing that, one piece can affects the whole on that. So it's important to take those into consideration as well. But again, just appreciate all the work and effort. Feel like, there's a great budget that was prepared and presented on that. So again, thank you to Relyn and everybody else that had a part of that. We truly have some of the best in the state, from our finance director, our treasurer, from the planning and zoning director, Parks and Rec, to our HR director, everybody, our public works, our police chief. I really truly believe our leaders are the best in the state. I hold them up to anybody that's out there. I'm just so grateful for them and what they do for me personally and for our city. So that kind of ends and concludes my remarks. But again, it is, council has any further discussion regarding whether it's the positions we've presented, the budgets. I know we've already had some pretty good discussion on salary, wages, things of that nature. But if there's anything else that council wants to discuss at this time, that would be appropriate, the time for that. And if you just want to go home and take the rest of the evening, you're welcome to that either. So it's your time.
So just to be clear, we'll schedule another meeting a week or two from now? We'll have another meeting at some point?
So, and just specifically for the police wages, is that kind of what you're?
Is that just wages or?
I will say that the budget hearing is on August 15th. And there's a deadline that I have to put it out to the public, I think by August, is it July 29th or August 1st?
It's August. So you'll get the tentative, you'll receive Raven's tentative budget at the August 1st meeting, and you'll confirm a setting of the date for the public hearing, which is August 20th. At that point, the tentative budget cannot be raised. It can be lowered, but it cannot be raised. And at that point, then it becomes public knowledge and publication. After that tentative date is set. So it'll be immediately after that will be the first publication.
Is that the date that we submit the L2 to the county, or what?
No, that's later.
That's later.
Yeah. But I will say that the requirement is that the L2 has to match, the L2, whatever is on L2, has to match what we pass in the public hearing. So for property tax. The tax commission does check that as well.
So I've got another question, but just to follow up, is that a yes or no, we'll have another meeting?
There's a 48-hour period that I can notice out, so Raylene will be gone this rest of this week. We talked about that today, so I can notice it out for next week as long as we can get, she completes, I understand. He's gone this week, we'll be back the final week of the month.
Next week's his last week.
Okay, so very feasibly, we could do something with scheduling him.
And what, maybe, like I said, we'd want to have that specific for that. If there's anything else we should discuss tonight, get that done. And then that meeting would be specifically focused on police pay. And then we could even proposal, and I'm not sure what but August 1st, that city council meeting, we could do it just before, do it an hour before, whatever it is, and get it done that evening, rather than this another meeting making you come in. You're obviously already coming in on that, so we could meet at say 5 o'clock, and again be very focused on just the police pay. So anything else other than that, we should discuss tonight, get that cleared up, and then that would just be focused on police pay and benefits on that evening.
The only problem I see with that the tentative budget will be available to the public with the packet. So, and then, I mean, if there's any changes, it's going to affect that as well. Of course, we'll repost, obviously, but yes, before you can accept it as a tentative budget that evening, you could have a workshop.
Yeah, so I guess then but that, it can't go up, right, after that, so it probably would be best to meet at least a week before that then, so.
When does he come back?
So chief gets back,
14 days. Yeah.
28th?
28th, right?
That's 31st, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, and, you know, it's
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we have it?
Zoom, I know he's in meetings pretty much all day, but we could, and also, like I said, you know, Deputy Chief Sopoaga, I know Chief has full confidence, if you wanna talk in that regards, if you felt comfortable with him relaying it, discussing that, and him representing on that, but again, if you want the chief, you want the chief, so we'll kind of go that way.
Sure, council members. So yeah, if what you're looking for is a proposal, I can talk with him and put together a PowerPoint proposal as far as what he wants, what he's expecting, and he could probably zoom in as well, but, so he is finished with the class on the 27th, but he flies back that weekend and he has family stuff until that Monday when he returns. So we can either go and wait for him to come back, or I can work with him to put something together and get past that as far as presenting a proposal.
I think that'd be agreeable. If you can work with the chief and we can put you on the hot seat, let's do that.
That's what deputy chiefs are for.
That's right. That's what I tell the mayor at the last managers meeting.
Raylan, I have a couple of questions. And it's probably just something I missed, but now's the time to ask, right? Under general fund, we have repair and maintenance building, it's 0110260064330. And there's 63,150 budgeted there. And under general fund, a couple pages later, 0110270064330, we have repair and maintenance building 22,200. Why are they separated?
So, 700 is for, what we call the veterans home, or the seniors, not the senior center. The veterans hall, downtown, it's a chart of account thing, sorry.
Division 700 is, was created for building maintenance for city buildings that were not necessarily used by city themselves. So the Veterans Building is owned and maintained by the city, but we let veterans use it. And so the costs to maintain that building are in that division, as well as the Sweetwater, or what used to be known as the Sweetwater Building downtown, currently used by Destination Caldwell. So that division is held for repair and maintenance of buildings that are not necessarily utilized by the city itself. The other one is for city, public works building and city hall.
Okay, thanks. That explains why they're both under general fund and not under department head there. And the only other thing I'd like to readdress, Mr. Mayor, is the employee appreciation funds and the community outreach funds. Two comments there. We're increasing both of those. The employee appreciation funds are going up nearly $20,000 from what we've spent already. I know we're not at year's end yet, but I doubt we're going to spend $20,000 in the next 3 months. And then the community outreach funds are going up as well, which I don't think anybody would argue that we shouldn't be generous with the city. I think my argument is simply this: as we look at making the priority taking care of our employees first, because the day has finally come when we promised them. I wonder if it wouldn't be wise to pare some of that back, so that we have a little more elbow room for salaries as we continue in these discussions and negotiations. And so that's one point. The other is, I think anything under the city council budget, so those community relations projects, I know we were emailed kind of a breakdown of what those would be. Is that email then intended to be the exact representation of what would be spent by those community outreach funds?
So I'll answer that question first, since we're there. No, it is not. So it's not, this is what you must do, it is that just, it shows what has been in the past. And then the council obviously has the prerogative to continue with that, to adjust it, amend it, to who it goes to, but no, it doesn't mean, so it just shows what those have gone to, the organizations in the past that have gone to, but does not mean that you are required for those amounts on that. So no, that would not be required part of that. On the other one, so just wanted to kind of make sure we're looking at the same numbers. So you said that, so I know the employee performance pay is proposed to go down by $10,000, and then an increase equal to that in the employee relations. There was some one-time expenditures from last year. So in the 23 budget, so the one we're in right now, employee performance pay was $20,000, and then the employee relations was $29,000. And so in this proposed budget, the employee performance pay is proposed to go down by $10,000. The employee relations goes up by just over $8,000. So not the full 10, because there were some one-time expenditures in the employee relations. So that's why you don't have the exact 10,000 to 10,000 decrease, and then an 8,200 increase in the other one. Are those the two that you're kind of?
I think so. Remember, we had an error in those, in our books when they were handed out, and I forget the reason of that error. What is then the 2024 budget proposal for employee relations?
Is $37,200.
Okay, so that is a correct total, and I'm just, again, wondering, that is 20,000 more than what has already been spent this year, I believe, if the numbers I've been provided are correct. And so, we've done a lot of great things for the employees, and I know they appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I think you've done a phenomenal job of communicating that in tangible ways. That Christmas dinner alone, that we hired Texas Roadhouse to feed the entire city staff was a phenomenal gesture. All those free door prizes and everything, they appreciate that, I know. But I just question why we're increasing it by 20,000 more than what was spent to date. I think that's where I'm looking, not at what was budgeted. If we're trying to find money to save as we continue to look at salaries and potentials for putting it there, I'm just questioning that number. And then going back to the community relations monies, I would recommend that anything that's under the council budget come before the council for approval, that no monies be spent out of our budget unless they come before us at council meeting, and we can direct them at that time.
Yeah, and that's very appropriate, and no problem on that at all to bring that forward. And I don't know if it has to be a formal vote or just a discussion on where council wants to go with it. We can look at that and see if it does have to be formal or just discussion. At the end of like a council meeting, say, okay, this is a proposal, does council agree or not? But if it needs to be a formal vote, we can look at that and make sure that's done appropriately. And then as far as, so those numbers that you've seen, they're probably because if you pay, typically it's paid, with the relations through like a credit card, and then that takes a month or so to process. So those numbers that you're looking at are probably, did not include the last month expenditures. And so you gotta remember, we still have basically 4 months left of budget on those numbers. And so there still is, a third of the year left in regards to those numbers. So even though it looks like we are well under that, if any expenditures occurred in the last month, they're probably not showing on that. And then you gotta remember, we have 3 more months left in this budget cycle that we're currently in now.
June is included, so the current month is not.
And if there was credit card payments on that, and Rochelle really can correct me on this if I'm wrong, usually those take about a month to come in, because you have to get the invoice, the statement, right? You have to get the statement back, and then that's when it gets incorporated. So if I bought something today, say for $5,000 on the city credit card, that would not show on there for probably about a month. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, all expenditures are on average about 30 days out before they actually hit the books, because it takes time for processing.
So yeah, so even if it was printed today, there could have been an expenditure 28 days ago that isn't showing on there yet, so.
And then just finally, one more comment and one more place we might be able to consider saving a little money. And it looks as though, and by the way, before I even address this, I want to say, you've done a phenomenal job with our 4th of July treatment. Our parade has improved, I don't know, 100-fold. The activities that go on, our fireworks display probably rivals any other in the valley. It's been phenomenal. And I think we're doing a great job on the 4th of July. But I just wonder why we need to increase our budget by $15,000 for Independence Day. We're doing pretty good. Again, maybe we could do more, but the thought is, again, if we're looking for money for salaries this time of year, she's probably gonna tell me this is coming from some other fund, not general fund, but if we're looking for 10,000 here and 20,000 there, so that we can negotiate fairly on salaries, the 4th of July might be one place where this year we don't increase it. $15,000 is a lot of fireworks, right, Brad? But I'm just saying, I would wonder about that.
I was just gonna tell you that for the last 2 years, we have been paying that amount. We are just fixing the budget to correct the amount that we have been paying.
There it is.
So, if you would hold on to that for a second. And we'll get to you, Councilor Richter, as well. This may be one of the things you're gonna discuss, but I know two things we still want to discuss before we close tonight. One is, I know there's been some kind of emails and just a little bit of discussion about the request from the fire department regarding proposed K-9 for them, so we want to have some discussion on there, see where the council is on that. And then also the $400 bonus pay, kind of get some direction from council on that. And this is where we also may rely on a little bit on Shelley, you know, does that need to be, or it sounds like the council isn't wanting to just do a blanket $400 for every employee. So what is council's prerogative? Do you wish to see that out there on a merit base? If so, obviously we would need Shelley to weigh in. How do we merit base that for the employees? Because that gets a lot more difficult. Because like we were talking earlier, you know, like Councilman Allgood said, you know, if I'm friends with Robin, does that mean I get a $400 increase now? And if I'm not going out to lunch with her, I'm only going to get $100 at the end of the year? So those are things you have to be really cautious with, because they can really come back and cost you considerably more if somebody feels that they're biased just because they're not buddies with the department head or whoever it is, so they didn't get the full 400 on that. So some discussion on that, kind of council's thoughts on that, and obviously we want our HR director to weigh in on making sure we're going down the right path, and if we're not, she can correct us and put us back. So I know those are two things we still wanted to have discussion on. I don't know if that was one of the two you're going to just mention, but we definitely want to make sure we talk on those. I don't know if you want to do that now and then wait on yours, or do you want so anyway, so that's kind of those two things to talk about.
All right, so is it on? Sure. So I'll talk about bonuses for sure. That would be a problem if that's the case and how bonuses are given out. I think that clearly Shelley can weigh in on this, but there's procedures put in place so that when you ask for a bonus, that certain criteria are met so that that doesn't occur. Meaning you have to base your request for the bonus on a set of standards, and there's plenty of them out there from different agencies. So that might be one way to do that, rather than they're my buddy and I just am gonna write a 1-sentence paragraph that they should get a bonus. You actually have to justify it, then it has to be approved typically by another supervisor or a collective group, depending on what the bonus is for, to ensure that all those checks and balances are in place for that bonus. So that's what I'll say about the bonus, then I'll go into the dog later after we talk about the bonus. How about that?
Yeah, it works.
I agree 100% with Mr. Doty's explanation. Gotta have criteria, gotta have performance to do it, so.
You know,
How are we handing it out right now? How are,
Doesn't want a hot mic.
how are we handing out the bonuses right now? I mean, I agree that there need to be a set standard, but how are we doing it right now? Does that need to be created, what he's talking about?
So before last year, they were then paid quarterly, $100 to employees. This last year, it was at the employee appreciation dinner, that those were handed out. So again, 400 pre-tax, and then whatever that was after taxes, what they got, but it was handed out at the employee appreciation dinner.
Okay, but they weren't meeting a set of standards like he was, there wasn't a list that they had to meet or anything like that.
That is correct.
Oh.
Every employee got it.
So HR can put that together then? Okay.
So my understanding is there's the mayor's performance bonus, which they do have to write up a justification to get up to $300 for performance. How I thought it was, again, I haven't been here very long, but my understanding of that $400, it was gonna be kind of an ongoing appreciation bonus that wasn't performance-based, but more about kind of happy holidays, we value you, it's given right after the employee appreciation dinner in December, so that's kind of what I thought the spirit of that $400 was. Certainly we can change that if the council wants to do that, and we can have criteria. I would say $400 is not a lot of money. When people, get the net amount after taxes are taken out, it goes down quite a bit. And I think employees do value it as a, hey, thank you, I appreciate you, more than kind of a performance bonus. So I think we could maybe have both of those at the same time. But if you want to change kind of what it's for, we certainly can look at that and set some criteria. I kind of like, just personally, the thank you, we appreciate you. Hopefully we don't have employees hanging around year to year who aren't good performers and who aren't doing a value to the city. So that's kind of my.
On some level, I agree with that, which is why we provide the great dinner and the prizes and the door prizes and all of that. But bonuses, in my opinion, should not be given out just to everyone. You should earn your bonus. That's what a bonus is. And so every employee gets the meal, every time to the meal, every employee gets a fair chance at the prizes up there. It's a free night to take your family out to get a free dinner, or is it just for couples? Just couples. And that is the reward for being an employee at the city, as well as many other things that Councilor Williams has cited what the budget is for that, for rewarding them for being a city employee, because we certainly appreciate them. But I think for a bonus, to go above and beyond is what a bonus is for. And so for rewarding everyone for the same work, whether you put in 150 hours a week like Brent or someone else, I think that type of effort and work deserves a bonus. And it doesn't mean that every employee might get something or might not get something. I'm just saying that it should be valued based on the criteria that the supervisor identifies as the worth of the employee. You can certainly do the bare minimum, that's fine, that's what we hire you to do, but if you do more than that, then you should receive a bonus. And not just everyone gets the same thing, just by being a city employee. In regards to bonus money.
I know that you guys are looking at pay. Could I have a different suggestion that maybe potential that you could do with this bonus instead? If you're really wanting to target pay, it's a little bit different, but it is a one-time option to boost pay, but it is limited. You could always, it'd still be $400, but you could always boost it as an hourly pay to them for a one-time hourly increase across the year or limited. And just have it be across every employee for a short term, just for this year. It's a very small amount, but it would be for every employee, and then it would go away at the end of the year. So it's another thing that we could do with this, but it wouldn't be very much.
Correct, again, or I'm gonna jump on Councilor Williams' bandwagon though, but if we put that in the pot of the 6% holdback, then someone may give 1% more than someone else. Again, that would be a bonus, that would just be the worth to the city, right, based on the evaluation that we're doing. So though it's not a ton of money, but if we can give someone a little bit more that's deserving of that money, then maybe that's an option too.
I don't mind leaving it budgeted for each division. I think it should be up to the department head to present to the elected official what that employee deserves, so that there's a process. And it's not just one big pot now of bonus money, but there's still the opportunity for Mr. McDonald to recognize an employee who's done exceptionally well because one of his managers comes to him and says, hey, you need to know this person did a phenomenal job, went above and beyond, worked extra hours or whatever it might be. And if that money is not spent, it can come back into general fund.
I want to just be clear, you have the mayor has a completely separate account for that, right? Like what he was just saying, for somebody, the over and above, what is that fund for?
So, yes, the mayor has his employee pay that people have a criteria and it's a form that they fill out and it's a maximum of a $300 bonus.
Okay, so that's kind of what Councilor Williams was talking about, where somebody goes to the department head and said, this is done, whatever. And what we're talking about is a more streamlined set of requirements, I guess, in order to receive the full 400 if needed. And basically, is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Also, just out of curiosity, do the employees get like free golf membership or free pass to the pool when that's up and running? Anything that they get city services for free?
Over the last 2 years, they have complete full access to the pool anytime they want to for free.
I'm just curious if
so-
there's other incentives also like that.
So there are, so employees do get free family passes to the pool when it's up and running, which should be, we hope, next summer. So they do get that. They don't get a free golf pass. They can get a discounted golf pass for themselves out for the golf courses here in Caldwell that the city does now. And then I forgot what I was gonna say originally. The employee performance pay, I was gonna give an example on that. So yeah, so there is that in the mayor. So it's a department head, supervisor, manager can propose for one of their employees to receive that have gone above and beyond. So a great example is last year we had an issue where construction was going on Ustick Road. There was a water line, I believe it was, that was punctured. And so we had a shutdown. It was just a huge issue. So we had staff that literally had to do 24/7 on site. And so it kind of went above and beyond on that. And so they were, and I can't remember if it was Rob or Ashley or one of their people had proposed that they be awarded, and it's usually between $100 and $300, or maybe it was Brent. But that's an example of that, where they went above and beyond, literally slept out there because they had to watch the pumps, make sure the generators didn't go down. And so that's kind of those instances, and we get those, throughout the year. And so that's what that employee performance pay is, to be able to give that one time. You just went above and beyond. We want to recognize you now, which I think is important rather than waiting until the end of the year, because by then they've forgotten about it, like, oh, the city didn't even care that I did this. Not that that's why they did it, but we were able to do it immediately, right on the time, so they remember what that's for. We can show our appreciation to them. So that's what that employee performance pay is used for.
Okay. So it's almost like if you're doing that, then are we duplicating that with the one that's just being handed out, or what kind of set of standards are you looking for for them to be able to get that bonus at the end of the year?
So I'll just throw out an idea for the council's consideration. Gordon Law, when he was the public works director, there was a sum of money that he would ask all the department heads to rank their employees from the very best performer, and then he would audit that, and then he would allocate this. In this case, it was actually a pay increase, but he would allocate that in each department until it ran out of money. Based on the best performer got the most increase, perhaps something like that could be done for bonus income. Anyway, just a thought.
It is, I know, it just has to be quantifiable on that, and I've started to learn that as I know working with Shell and things as, we've looked through these things. I remember I came up with like this big list of these things, you could look at that, and it was great and wonderful, but again, it needs to be, has to be that quantifiable, this is why they're the top performer, because they're doing X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, you get into the thing again, like was brought up before, is, are you saying they're the top performer because you hang out with them after work, or this or that? So it's great, but you just gotta be able to make sure that it's quantifiable, you're showing they're the top performer because they show up to work on time or early every day, because they completed this report in this amount of time and had this few errors on these reports, so quantifiable data to show on those types of things.
Well, that's kind of what I was just gonna ask, like, you know, I mean, obviously we don't want it to become one where you go, yeah, my best friend's number one. So I guess what my question is what are the standards to get the bonus at the end of the year?
And that's where we would rely on our wonderful HR department to come up with something like that. Or again, I think kind of like, if I'm not mistaken, Councilor Doty, the direction he was going is, do you roll that into that 6% pot and have that into that, you know, the comp and wage study that's going on to add more money into that? I think is kind of the direction that Councilor Doty was recommending, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that.
I can answer, I'll try and answer a couple of them. Yes, I don't disagree with it being rolled into the pot, because you have a sum of money that you can give for people with exemplary performance or for bonus worthy work. If you're not going to do that, I mean, we have several examples that I could bring to the city of how to achieve a bonus, but it is not a ranking system. Several people can deserve the same thing based on different categories. It's not always about productivity. It could be whether you save the state thousands of dollars by coming up with something more innovative that actually saves you time and not as much productivity, but saves the taxpayers money. So I don't agree with any type of ranking system. I think for future references, we move forward, and I know Raylan's probably, it's on her list somewhere, is an evaluation system where you are evaluated each independently in different categories, where a supervisor must justify what they're writing in those categories. There's many, many different programs out there. None of them are exactly, I won't say fair, but they're all subjective. However, if you stay within the form helps guide you to ensure that you're rating people where they belong. In addition to that, the supervisor is not the final say-so in the exemplary rating. That rating must move on to the next supervisor, and in fact, sometimes up to 3 supervisors. For us, I'm not saying it's the perfect way. It just helps prevent favoritism, where if you're gonna write it down, then you're gonna go justify it to your next 2 supervisors that what you've written down is accurate. And it's not in generalities. You must provide specific examples with very detailed information about how that person achieved that exemplary status. That might be something more with pay raises in the future, depending on whether it's a step or whether it's a pay range. But for bonuses, there are many examples of, I could provide some, I'm sure. I don't think they're copyrighted, are they, Raylan, at the state? Of some criteria of how you receive a bonus and what has to be written down and what has to be justified. Sometimes they require a second witness, sometimes they don't. It just depends on what type of bonus that you're asking for, what type of award you're asking for. But for the mayor, I guess in the end for this year, I don't know if this helps Raylan out or not, the mayor already has a pot for bonuses in itself. I'd rather take the 400,000 per employee, which is for hang on, I want the bonuses back. Can I get one of those? I'm sorry, how much is it? 400. So 166,000, though it's not a lot, it may be a percentage on someone's paycheck that wouldn't get that. It's well deserving according to the study. We all just spent taxpayers' money on to review, and now everybody's going to get $400 when we could have given 1% more to the person that the study that we just spent taxpayer money on says actually someone else should have received that 1%. That's all I'm saying. So.
Raylan, this 166,000, is it ongoing money or is this annual one-time money?
So it counted as ongoing money. It's filled out one time, but because it's in wages, it's kind of counted as ongoing money.
So if it were rolled into our salary pot, that wouldn't create an issue to make sure that it continued to be funded?
That is correct. It would be just fine to roll it within the 6%.
Thank you.
So is that kind of consensus then from the council to look at just rolling that into that 6%? I'm seeing the head nods on that.
Yes, but I'm gonna just say this, if, depending on the cost and how many people like golf or whatever, are there ways where the city can then, give something to the employees, you know, like in lieu of that, you know what I mean, like, I understand what everybody's saying, and I understand you have your own fund, and that has to be qualified and all the stuff and whatever, and I agree that that money should probably go back into pay raises and stuff that we can use, more responsibly. Just wondering if there's anything the state can offer further besides this full pass and, discount on all. As a perk, or.
I was just gonna say, Diane, I feel like, we have offered several things like the PTO buyback, which we're instituting this year, which I forget how many employees actually, but we didn't quite remember, almost 50 that institute that, and it's, we're gonna, you know, over 100 hours each, or up to 100 hours, and so we're gonna buy back their PTO and pay it out in a bonus for most of them. You know, that's gonna be cash to them, so I think that's a benefit that not every place has. So I think those little things, those little policy changes that we start to do have impact on our employees to try to get them more funds, so. It's not everything, but I don't, you know, little things as they move the scale, I think.
Okay, so I think we're good on that one. Is that direction's good and clear for us on that one, right? Okay. So let's talk about the dog. So, Councilor Doty, would like you to start with that one.
All right, we'll see where we end up with the dog. So, well, during the presentation, I gotta give credit to Councilor Williams who noticed the dog. There was a request for a dog for the fire department, an amount about $40,000. And I'm not really sure whether the council's gonna come down on this, but my thoughts and opinion when I saw that, and the chief wrote us an email about what the dog's capabilities are. What the dog brings to the table, from what I read, just in a nutshell, is that Salt Lake City has the closest dog unit, fire dog unit, which I gotta be honest, I'm more familiar with police dog units than fire dog units. However, there may be a reason it's only in Salt Lake, and we certainly trust our department heads, but the issue I'm having here is the fire department needs more firefighters, we need more firefighters, we need more firefighters. Now, we add a dog to the mix, and I'm just gonna tell you from my police experience, you might as well count whoever's handling the dog will not fight a fire. They'll be running the dog all day long, whether it's training, taking care of the dog, taking it to the vet, the overtime that it takes that's required for the dog, and then when that person's on vacation, who's gonna take care of the dog. I'm just saying there seems to be a lot more planning that needs to go in place. I also think in his email, he mentioned that maybe the dog services could be provided out and we receive payment if the dog is used in other locations. But as far as I know, none of those contracts or MOUs have been worked out for reimbursement for the use of the dog. We're very fortunate in Caldwell that we don't have many fires, and we certainly don't have many arsons, and I wanna knock on wood because I don't wanna start some weird trend. I just don't see at this time, if they need more firefighters, that we add a dog to the mix, which I believe will remove a firefighter to take care of the dog full-time and train the dog, and the overtime required with that, then yeah, we need more firefighters. So that's just my 2 cents on the dog. If my counselors disagree with me, then I'll certainly go with whatever the consensus is. Thank you.
I want to actually see a dog at some point. I think it would be really cool for Caldwell to have that and whatever, but I also agree, I feel like there wasn't any plan, I didn't see any planning with it, like, Councilor Doty was talking about with the MOUs and all that kind of stuff. What I'd like to do is give it another year, have them bring back a presentation on the dog and how that's gonna work with the, other agencies, with the overtime, with who's gonna handle the dog, where it's gonna live, all that kind of stuff too. So I'd like to see it happen, but I'd just like to see more information on it.
before I pass it to you, I just want to say, I've been saying all along, where can we save? And that's been kind of my question along the way, and I don't see this as the year to add the dog. And another $40,000 can go back into salaries, can go back into making employees first. And as has been noted, we may be opening up discussions with the fire department in this process, and that $40,000 might be better suited to make up some of that need there. So.
He stole all my thunder.
Yeah, in my opinion, I agree with the Councilman Delia, and I don't think it's cost effective for the taxpayer either. So maybe in the future, but, with all the new subdivisions we're putting in, calls should go down with all the latest fire prevention and everything else too, so I just don't see it all, in this year's budget.
I just had another thought. Are you done? You done? You talking about dogs? I'm changing the subject unless you got something.
No, I would just say, can we just get a donation or something? But if it just lived in a station and people would donate food, that'd be fine.
So totally different subject, and it's, I don't know if it has to relate with the budget, but Mr. Orton said something in one of the previous meetings that I feel like we need to make sure we address. And that is that new development is not paying for itself and it's costing taxpayers for new houses coming in. Is that, Brent, is there something in the works to make that correct? I don't want that to keep going without being corrected.
So like impact fees programs that we're talking about?
Impact fees or higher hookup fees or whatever it takes to make new development pay for itself.
Yeah, so there are steps in action to address that. First of all, the connection fees in water will see a significant increase. And tomorrow night at City Council, we get the presentation on all of the public works fees. So we'll have a discussion on that, and you'll see that that's a 50% increase this year. We anticipate a 50% increase next year, and another one next year. That's represented in our budget sheet. Obviously, only this year's is active because that's the one that you consider to adopt. But we have projected it to help us understand what the fund balance will look like as we move that up. And that's based on the study that was done by Bowen Collins in our water facilities plan update. In terms of impact fees, Ray Lynn is going to be taking over as the impact fee administrator for the city with me leading, and surprise! But all the departments are already on trajectory to do appropriate master planning efforts. And this is not my doing. Ray Lynn has been working with the fire department, the police department, the parks department already, and we also have Rob's been heading up the transportation master plan update. Significant effort. It's been in process for about a year. The thing that's great about that is these studies will bring about in-depth knowledge by people who have real expertise in those fields for what the city needs going forward in fire, police, parks, transportation. And then boil down out of that capital improvement plans and be able to analyze those for what part of this is eligible for impact fees and what part isn't. The point is that you can have master planning and impact fees following master planning that's real and appropriate, as opposed to what we have done in the past, which is from the time that we established impact fees in 2004 with a real actual start, I guess I would say, in my opinion, in 2007, is we've hired an impact fee consultant who said, hey, Lieutenant Wright, hey, Chief so-and-so, what do you think needs to be included in the capital improvement plan? And they're like, well, I guess this and this and this seems important to me, that really needs to be included. But it has, so it's been kind of off the cuff, and it's I guess in my opinion, hope it doesn't offend anyone, it's been the tail wagging the dog a little bit in impact fees. So now we'll have impact fees based on studies, and that's not my doing, that's really Ray Lynn's doing, and the department heads in those departments that have said, hey, we need a better approach to this. So I think with that, you're gonna see impact fees, the impact fee committee, they research and they scrutinize really diligently. And so it's always important to say, hey, once we establish this is what's necessary to maintain our level of service, and the city has a right to maintain a level of service from the time they establish impact fees. So if our level of service at the time we established fire and parks and police impact fees was XYZ, it is the city's right to maintain that level of service. So even if we've fallen down on that for a few years and we didn't take enough impact fees to keep that level of service, it is appropriate for impact fees to be raised to the level that will protect and maintain that level of service. It's not something that you sacrifice and now it's given away and you can't regain it. You're supposed to be able to regain it and maintain that level of service from then on.
Thank you, Brent, and that's what I was after. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we're growing so fast and that our longtime taxpayers are not bearing the burden for that growth. They shouldn't have to, so.
Yeah, there's all kinds of improvements we probably need to make, but that part is on its way.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the big ones you mentioned there is that traffic impact fee. I think that's gonna be a big help as well on that. As a former ACHD transportation planner, so they've had traffic impact fees for years, and we do not. So we do have, like, if you hit a certain threshold, then you either do improvements or you pay into a roadway trust fund. That's only when you hit certain criteria. Impact fees, you're basically paying it pretty much no matter what, based on whatever you're doing. It's a lower amount or a higher amount. And I know I was trying to pull up the fee schedule, what it is currently, but when I worked at ACHD, this would have been 6+ years ago. Well, no, much further than that. I just was already 10 years at the city, so it would have been actually over 10 years ago. If you're building a dentist office, for example, so if you came in, you're paying nothing in traffic impact fees. I remember, again, 10+ years ago, your traffic impact fees for just a dentist office were over $100,000 typically. And so obviously that adds up, and that goes into a fund to help to build roads and improvements and things like that. And so that's gonna be a huge deal for the city. I know that we've been working on that for a few years now. And so excited for that coming in. So it actually gets pulled up. So, for example, in ACHD, for a single family home, you know, you're paying a traffic impact fee of $3,500. And so for every single family home, that goes into that. And you think about it, we do 500 to 700 permits a year for just home. That's just a residential home. So that adds up. For others, like I said, it can get extremely expensive depending on the use. And it's all calculated off of, you know, pass-by trips versus dedicated trips. That's why dentist offices are typically the highest, because people will drive 15, 20 miles to get to a dentist. Rather than a gas station, usually it's turning off the side of the road wherever you're at to go to it. So those things are taken into account on that, but you'll see you know, a good amount of money start to come in to help to improve our roads. We're getting to the point on some of them that are needing quite a bit of repair on them. I think Chicago is one of the worst. Between Linden here and 21st Avenue, it's pretty rough on that, but you should start to see a big increase on that in regards to that. So yeah, that'll be a big help to make sure that growth is paying for itself. So I'm excited to have that implemented here in the near future.
Before I hand it to Chuck in some proposal will be forthcoming. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Mayor?
The next 6 months, you think?
Yeah, for transportation, probably about 6 months out.
I just want to make sure that Councilman Ogden knows that the concern citizens of Canyon County is going to draw up some more legislation on impact fees and how it should be handled. And I don't know if you ever attended those committees, but you know, they're appraised of private citizens, real estate folks, contractors, current, former councilmen, and I mean, it's a pretty good spread of different opinions, but they are going to come up with some legislation and probably go through Mr. Skog and some of the other people, so you'll be seeing that this fall session.
Good.
Okay.
I guess, I know that you guys are still discussing, but I guess I would like, I know the first day is a long time ago, but for police, you guys had brought up the need for 2 more patrol officers, and I just want to get your guys' opinion on that and what to do going forward with that. It was one or the other.
I think that it would be best to defer to them to ask them what they would want to do with it, because I have a feeling if you ask them, they would forego those 2 positions if we could negotiate the 13%. But you should check with them to get that answer.
So yeah, during the presentation, we asked for 4 police officer positions and 2 detectives. There is no classification for detectives, so it really just falls under police officers, so it's 6 police officers. That's what we were asking for. Talking with the chief, his priority is to make sure we get the wages where they need to be, because his thought process is retention and recruitment. If we can't recruit people with the wages we have, then we're not gonna be able to retain them either. So his priority is really moving forward with, if we have to give up a few positions to get the wages where they need to be, then that's his priority.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so we got those 2 items covered. Did you have another one still, or? Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion this time?
I actually have something to say. So I was just gonna also thank everybody for all their hard work, and the department heads and finance. It's been really great. And also as a resident, to this council for asking questions, because I know that there's been a lot of interaction in the mayor, also and a lot of explanation that we haven't seen in years past so much. And so I think that really helps everybody, especially like someone like myself who's, you know, a widow, came from a pre-tax amount, so I appreciate everybody keeping an eye on that very much. And also, this is totally not budget related, but I'm gonna squeeze it in anyway. I had a resident ask me a question today, and I went to both Julie and Raylyn, and then they brought Rochelle into it, and Denise. And within like 7 minutes, this woman who's been complaining for 2 years about the same thing, it was solved, done. I called her, she was very appreciative, and it was just amazing. And like, they just came up with a solution, and it was done, and you know, after 2 years of listening to her complaining, so that was awesome, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that, because that's definitely one thing that this entire council would be very proud of, is the people that work for this city. Again, I know I said this before, but we have phenomenal staff, and so excited where we're at with that and what they do and the service they provide. So it's great to get those things taken care of, those answers done and accomplished. So thank you for commenting on that and noting that. Okay, and I think that kind of concludes that. I think, yes, that's
Can everybody look at their calendar real quick so we can sit right?
okay, so she wants everybody to look at their calendar. So this would be kind of that follow-up for Chief Sopwalga to come and present those questions in regards after talking to Chief Ingram. So
The
the,
24th or 25th in the evening, both of the dates
So-
are clear with PD.
The 25th is better for me.
Can I just add something real quick? I think the DC kind of told us which way the chief wants to go. Do you still want to meet with him again for him to say the same thing again? It sounds like he's willing to forego the positions to increase the
So we
wages.
just ironed out what that,
Well, we were talking about the pay. We were meeting with him about pay, not the position.
Okay.
so like longevity stuff?
Well, all of it. I want to make sure that he's okay with changing the FLSA stuff, pay, all of
Yes,
it,
that's good.
all of that.
What's the dates, Deb?
24th, 25th, in the evening, 6 o'clock, we can have the community room.
Could we do it at like 4 o'clock?
I'd be good with that. 4 o'clock on the 25th?
Dave,
All right.
are we good?
I can be good.
Okay, 4 o'clock, which day are we better?
25th, it sounds like, is that correct? Okay,
Might be a few minutes late, but
okay, that's all right, so. Okay, so July 25th at 4 p.m. And that'll be noticed. Obviously, this is gonna be a full council on that, so, we will do a notification on that. Again, that'll be kind of specific towards for Chief Sopwalga to make that presentation, answer those questions on that at that time, so. Anything else to discuss tonight or to bring up? Okay, well, again, thank you for your time, I appreciate that. It sounds like we got just one more minor meeting coming up, and then we'll have this all wrapped up this part. Did you have something to bring up? or-
I guess the one big question, just to make sure that council's on the same page. So, before we leave, I wanna make sure that council is all good with taking the 3%, because that's really your biggest decision, and that is left into your guys' hands, so I wanna make sure everybody is okay with taking that 3% inflationary amount, or if we want to change that amount.
Again, your counsel to us was, given the tax rates and everything included, even if we take the 3%, the presentation was that property taxes would not go up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, sounds like everybody's good then. Okay, excellent.
Sound good?
Yes, and thank you for that clarification, appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Look, we got 33 minutes early, so enjoy the time back.